My family threw me out on Christmas Eve, screaming that I was a worthless freeloader who never contributed anything to the household. What they didn't know was that for the past 3 years, I'd been secretly paying their mortgage, utilities, and keeping food on their table. And when they changed the locks on me that night, they had no idea they'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because tomorrow morning, they were going to discover exactly what happens when you bite the hand that's been feeding you. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The snow was falling heavy that December evening when I pulled into the driveway of what used to be my home. My beat-up Honda Civic looked pathetic next to my stepbrother Jake's brand-new Mustang convertible, the one he'd somehow afforded on his part-time cashier salary at the local GameStop. I sat there for a moment, watching the warm yellow light spilling from the living room windows, knowing that in about 10 minutes, everything was going to explode. I grabbed my laptop bag and headed for the front door. Before I could even get my key out, the door swung open, and there stood my stepfather Marcus, his face already twisted in that familiar scowl he reserved just for me. "Well, well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," he sneered, blocking the doorway. "Let me guess, Vanessa, another long day at your imaginary job." Behind him, I could see my mother Patricia sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, shaking her head in disappointment. Jake was sprawled in the recliner, not even bothering to look up from his phone, but I could see the smirk on his face. I was at work, Marcus, like every day for the past 3 years. I tried to step around him, but he moved to block me again. "Work?" He let out a harsh laugh. "What work? Sitting in coffee shops with your laptop, pretending to be some kind of big shot? We all know you don't have a real job." That's when my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with the same condescension I'd heard my entire life. "Vanessa, we've been talking, and we've made a decision. We can't keep supporting you anymore. You're 25 years old, and you contribute absolutely nothing to this household." I felt my stomach drop, even though I'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. The signs had been there, the passive-aggressive comments, the eye rolls, the way they'd start talking about dead weight whenever I walked into a room. "I do contribute," I said quietly, "more than you know." Jake finally looked up from his phone, grinning like he was watching his favorite TV show. "Oh yeah? How exactly? Because last I checked, you don't pay rent, you don't buy groceries, and you sure as hell don't help around the house." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "That's right. Your brother works hard for his money, comes home exhausted from real work, and what do we get from you? Nothing. You eat our food, use our electricity, take up space, and give us nothing in return." The irony was so thick, I could taste it. Jake's hard work consisted of scanning barcodes and asking customers if they wanted to pre-order the latest Call of Duty game. Meanwhile, I'd been pulling 16-hour days building my freelance web development business from the ground up, working with clients across 3 time zones, often coding until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. But here's the thing. I'd learned a long time ago that my family didn't want to hear about my success. Every time I'd try to share good news about landing a new client or completing a major project, they'd find ways to diminish it. "That's not a real job," they'd say. "When are you going to get serious about your future?" So I'd stop telling them. I'd stop trying to prove myself. And apparently, that silence had convinced them I was doing nothing at all. "You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things and get out," Marcus continued, his voice getting louder. "We're done enabling your lazy lifestyle." "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You don't understand what I actually do all day." "We understand perfectly," my mother snapped. "We see you sitting around in your pajamas until noon, tapping away on that computer like you're saving the world. Meanwhile, real people are out there working real jobs and paying real bills." That's when Jake decided to pile on. Maybe if you got off your ass and applied for an actual job instead of playing pretend entrepreneur, you'd understand what the rest of us go through. I looked around the room at the 65-inch TV that had mysteriously appeared 6 months ago, at the expensive leather furniture that had replaced the old fabric couch, at the smart home devices scattered throughout the house. All of it was purchased after I'd started making serious money. All of it coincidentally timed with my business taking off. But they'd never connected the dots, never wondered how a single father working construction and a part-time retail employee could suddenly afford all these luxuries. You know what the worst part is? Marcus was really warming up now. We've been carrying you for 3 years, and you act like you're entitled to it, like we owe you something. Well, newsflash, princess, the gravy train stops here. I want you out by 8 a.m. tomorrow, my mother added, not even looking at me. And don't think you can just apologize your way back in this time. We've made up our minds. I stood there for a long moment, watching the three of them. Marcus, with his chest puffed out like he'd just solved the world's problems. My mother, with her self-righteous expression, convinced she was teaching me some valuable life lessons, and Jake practically bouncing in his chair with excitement at seeing me finally get what he thought I deserved. None of them had any idea that in my laptop bag was a folder containing 3 years' worth of bank statements, payment receipts, and financial records. None of them knew that the mysterious inheritance they thought my mother had received from a distant relative was actually money I'd been funneling into the household account every month. None of them realized that every single bill in this house, mortgage, electricity, water, internet, car insurance, even Jake's precious car payments, had my name on the payment authorizations. I'd set it up that way deliberately, routing everything through a property management company I'd created to handle the payments. To them, it looked like Patricia had gotten lucky with some long-lost family money. They never questioned the monthly deposits that kept their lights on and their bellies full. They just accepted it as their due and kept treating me like a burden. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll be gone by morning." Marcus looked almost disappointed that I wasn't putting up more of a fight. Just like that? No begging? No promising to change? Just like that. As I headed toward the stairs to pack, I heard Jake call out behind me. "Don't forget to leave the house key. We're changing the locks anyway, just to make sure you don't try to sneak back in." I paused on the bottom step and turned back to look at them one last time. "You're really sure about this? You want me completely out of your lives?" "Completely," my mother said firmly. "It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet." "All right then," I said, continuing up the stairs. "I'll make sure to cancel everything tomorrow." "Cancel what?" Marcus called after me. But I was already halfway to my room, pulling out my phone to send a very important email to my property management company. By this time tomorrow, they were going to understand exactly what I'd been contributing to the household. And by Christmas morning, they were going to realize that biting the hand that feeds you comes with consequences they never saw coming. I spent the next hour packing my essentials, listening to them celebrate downstairs like they'd just won the lottery. Every laugh, every joke about how they'd finally gotten rid of the deadweight just made me more certain that what I was about to do was absolutely justified. They wanted me out of their lives. They were about to get exactly what they asked for. I woke up at 5 a.m. on Christmas Eve morning, not because I had set an alarm, but because I couldn't sleep. Through my bedroom window, I could see Jake's Mustang already covered in a fresh layer of snow. In 3 hours, I'd be walking out of this house forever, and by tonight, that car would probably be getting repossessed. My phone buzzed with a text from my business partner and best friend, Riley Chen. "The hotel room is ready. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I typed back, "They made their choice. Now they get to live with it." The truth was, I'd been preparing for this moment longer than they knew. 6 months ago, when the passive-aggressive comments started ramping up, I'd begun documenting everything. Every payment, every transfer, every single financial contribution I'd made to keep this household afloat. I'd also started looking for my own place and had already put a deposit down on a downtown loft that would be ready after New Year's. What my family didn't understand was that my fake job had been generating more income than Marcus made in his construction work and Patricia made at her part-time bookkeeping position combined. Last month alone, I'd pulled in $12,000 from 3 major website overhauls for corporate clients. The month before that, it was $15,000 from a custom e-commerce platform I'd built for a luxury jewelry company in California. But I'd kept quiet about the numbers, partly out of habit, and partly because I'd learned that success made my family uncomfortable. The bigger my business grew, the more they seemed to resent me. So I'd funneled the money through my property management LLC, making it look like Patricia had received some mysterious windfall that allowed them to upgrade their entire lifestyle. I pulled my suitcases out of the closet and started packing the rest of my belongings. Most of my valuable stuff, my backup computers, important documents, expensive camera equipment, I'd already moved to a storage unit weeks ago. All that was left were clothes and a few personal items. As I folded my clothes, I could hear them downstairs in the kitchen, their voices carrying up through the thin walls. "I can't believe how easy that was," Jake was saying. "I thought she'd put up more of a fight." "She knows she's been caught," Marcus replied. 3 years of freeloading will do that to a person, makes them realize they don't have a leg to stand on. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Patricia's voice joined in. "I just hope this teaches her some responsibility. Maybe being on her own will finally force her to get a real job and grow up." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. In about 6 hours, when the first automated payment failures started hitting their accounts, they'd find out exactly how grown up I was. My phone rang. It was David Sterling, the lawyer I'd hired last week. "Morning, Vanessa. Everything's set on my end. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with the full termination of financial support? Once I send these notices, there's no taking it back." "I'm certain, David. They've made it very clear they don't want me in their lives." "All right, I'll initiate the process at 9 a.m. sharp. The property management company will terminate the lease coverage, utilities will be switched back to their names, and all automatic payments will cease immediately. They'll receive official notification by certified mail this afternoon." "What about the car payments?" "Those will stop today as well. The financing company will receive notification that the guarantor is withdrawing support due to breach of family agreement. They'll have 30 days to establish new payment arrangements before repossession proceedings begin." I felt a small twist of guilt about Jake's car, but then I remembered him smirking at me last night, calling me dead weight. The car payments were $800 a month, money I'd been covering because he claimed his GameStop salary wasn't enough. Apparently, his salary would have to become enough real quick. "And the mortgage?" "That's where things get interesting," David said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Since you've been making the payments through your LLC, you're technically the beneficial owner of the mortgage agreement. When you withdraw support, the original borrowers, your mother and stepfather, will be responsible for immediate payment of the full amount, plus penalties for breach of the payment guarantee clause." "How long do they have?" 90 days to bring the account current or establish alternative financing. Given their actual income levels that you've provided me, I'd say their chances of qualifying for a new mortgage are essentially zero. After I hung up, I sat on my bed and looked around the room that had been my home for 3 years. The walls were covered with certificates from online programming courses, awards from web development competitions, and screenshots of positive client reviews. None of my family had ever bothered to read any of them. At 7:30, I heard Marcus's truck start up in the driveway. He was heading to work early, probably eager to avoid having to say goodbye to me. Patricia would be leaving for her half-day Christmas Eve shift at the accounting firm in an hour. That would leave just Jake and me in the house when everything started falling apart. I dragged my suitcases downstairs and loaded them into my Honda. The car might not look like much, but it was paid off and reliable. 2 things I could say about myself that my family apparently couldn't.
Jake was in the kitchen, making himself a bowl of cereal and scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in with my laptop bag. "Leaving already? I thought you had until 8. "No point dragging it out," I said, grabbing a bottle of water from the refrigerator. "Besides, I have some business calls to make this morning." He snorted. "Right, your business? Good luck with that in the real world." I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with a text from David. "First wave of termination notices sent. The property management company confirms all payments stopped as of 9 a.m. It was starting. "Jake," I said, turning back to him, "can I ask you something?" "Sure, whatever." "Do you actually believe I've been doing nothing for 3 years?" He set down his spoon and looked at me like I was stupid. "Vanessa, I live here too. I see you in your pajamas until noon every day. I see you sitting around on that laptop, ordering takeout, never leaving the house except to go to Starbucks. What exactly am I supposed to think? Maybe that I work from home? Doing what? Playing games? Watching Netflix? Come on." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, then turned the screen toward him. His eyes widened as he saw the account balance, $127,000. "This is just my business checking account," I said quietly. "I have 3 others, plus savings and investments. Last year, I grossed over $200,000 building websites and applications for companies across the country." Jake's face went white. That's not possible." "It's very possible. And for the last 3 years, about $60,000 annually has been going to keep this house running. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, car payments, that new TV you love so much, the leather furniture, even your PlayStation 5. "You're lying." "Am I?" I scrolled to my payment history and showed him months of transfers to various accounts. "Here's last month's mortgage, $2,200. Here's the electric bill, $438, because someone keeps the heat at 75 degrees all winter. Here's your car payment, $800. Here's the internet bill that keeps your gaming running, $150 for the premium package." Jake grabbed the phone from my hand, staring at the screen in disbelief. Why didn't you tell us?" "I tried, at first. Remember when I landed my first major client 2 years ago? I was so excited, I wanted to celebrate. Marcus told me to stop bragging about my pretend job and come back to reality. When I got my first 5-figure payment, Patricia said I was living in a fantasy and needed to focus on finding real employment. So I stopped sharing." "But if you were paying for everything, why did you let us think?"
Let you think that Patricia had gotten some inheritance? That was the story you all came up with to explain how you could suddenly afford a lifestyle that was way beyond your actual means. I never corrected you because it seemed to make everyone happy. Jake sank into a chair, still staring at my phone. "Vanessa, if this is true, then last night You what? Kicked out the person who's been supporting this entire family? Yeah, that's exactly what you did." My phone rang. It was Patricia. "Vanessa!" Her voice was shrill with panic. "Where are you? I just got a call from the mortgage company saying our payment was declined. They're saying something about a guarantor withdrawal and immediate payment of the full balance." I looked at Jake, whose face had gone from white to gray. "I'm outside in my car, Mom, about to leave for good, just like you wanted." "What do you mean, just like we wanted? This has nothing to do with— Wait, you didn't— Tell me you didn't have anything to do with this mortgage thing." "I had everything to do with it, Mom, just like I had everything to keep this family afloat for the past 3 years." The line went dead. Through the kitchen window, I could see Jake sitting with his head in his hands, my phone still clutched in his fist. My phone buzzed with another text from David. "Utility companies confirm service termination notices sent. They have 48 hours to establish new accounts in their names or service will be disconnected." I walked back into the kitchen and gently took my phone from Jake. "Vanessa, you have to fix this," he said quietly. "We can't lose the house." "I'm not the one who decided I should be completely out of your lives, Jake. That was your choice, remember?" As I walked toward the door, he called after me, "But it's Christmas!" I paused at the threshold and looked back at him one last time.
Merry Christmas, Jake. I hope you and Marcus and Patricia enjoy learning what it's like to stand on your own 2 feet. I was halfway to the hotel when my phone started blowing up. First it was Jake, then Patricia calling back repeatedly, then Marcus, who apparently had gotten word at the construction site and was now frantically trying to reach me between cement pours. I let them all go to voicemail. The downtown Marriott, where Riley had booked me a suite, felt like stepping into a different world. The lobby was decorated with elegant Christmas trees, and soft jazz was playing overhead. It was peaceful, civilized, everything my family's house hadn't been for months. Riley was waiting for me in the hotel restaurant, her laptop open and a stack of legal documents spread across the table. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "So," she said as I sat down, "on a scale of 1 to nuclear warfare, how bad was it?" "They literally changed the locks behind me and told me I was dead weight," I replied, signaling the waiter for coffee. "Marcus said I was a freeloader who'd been living off their generosity for 3 years." Riley winced. "Ouch. And they still have no idea you've been paying for everything?" "Jake knows now. I showed him my account balances right before I left. Poor kid looked like he was going to throw up." "What about your mom and stepdad?" "Patricia got the mortgage company call about 20 minutes ago. Marcus is probably getting filled in as we speak." I pulled out my phone and saw 17 missed calls. "Yeah, I'd say they're starting to figure it out." Riley pushed a manila folder across the table. David Sterling's office sent over the complete financial breakdown. "Holy shit, Vanessa, you've been covering 92% of their household expenses." I opened the folder and scanned the numbers. It was even worse than I'd realized when I was living in the middle of it. Mortgage payments, insurance premiums, utility bills, car payments, credit card minimums. Even their grocery bills had been automatically charged to accounts I controlled. The only things they were actually paying for themselves were Marcus's work lunches and Patricia's occasional trips to the salon. "Look at this," Riley pointed to a highlighted section. "Your stepbrother's car payment, his car insurance, his credit card that he uses for gas and food, even his PlayStation Plus subscription. You've been funding his entire lifestyle, and he called you a deadbeat to your face." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Call me now. There's been some kind of mistakes with the banks." I showed the message to Riley, who snorted. "Mistake, right." "The best part is, they can't even claim they didn't know where the money was coming from," I said, flipping through more documents. "Every single automatic payment has been coming from Clearwater Property Management, LLC, my company, my tax ID number. If any of them had bothered to look at a single bank statement in the past 3 years, they would have seen it. But they never looked? Why would they? The bills were getting paid, the lifestyle was getting better, and as far as they were concerned, Patricia had won some kind of distant relative lottery. They were just happy to enjoy the ride." Riley leaned back in her chair. "So what's the endgame here? Are you really going to let them lose the house?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize.
Vanessa, this is Officer Jennifer Walsh with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. I have Marcus Thompson here at the station. He's asking me to do a welfare check on you. He seems to think you might be in some kind of trouble." I looked at Riley, who was trying not to laugh. "I'm fine, Officer Walsh. I'm at the Marriott downtown having lunch. Is there a specific concern?" "Well, Mr. Thompson seems to think you've been, how did he put it, financially compromised by someone? He's saying large amounts of money have been stolen from your family's accounts, and he's worried you might be in danger." "Officer Walsh, I'm a web developer who runs my own business. The money in question belongs to me, and I've simply stopped making voluntary payments to my family's household expenses. There's no theft, no danger, and no crime." There was a pause. "So you're saying you were previously paying their bills voluntarily?" "That's correct. They asked me to leave their home yesterday, so I'm respecting their wishes and removing myself from their financial responsibilities as well." "I see. Well, Mr. Thompson is pretty upset. He's demanding we file some kind of report."
He's welcome to file whatever reports he wants, but I think he'll find that voluntarily supporting family members and then stopping that support when asked to leave is perfectly legal. After I hung up, Riley was shaking her head in amazement. They called the police? They actually called the cops and tried to report you for stealing your own money? Marcus isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, I said. He probably genuinely believes that mysterious windfall Patricia thought she got was somehow legally theirs now. My phone rang again. This time it was Patricia, and I decided to answer. Vanessa, thank God, where are you? Marcus said the police were looking for you. I'm at a hotel, Mom, safe and sound, having a very peaceful lunch, actually. Listen, sweetheart, I think there's been some terrible misunderstanding. The bank is saying all these payments that have been keeping us afloat were coming from some company of yours? That can't be right. It's completely right. Clearwater Property Management, LLC. I started it 2 years ago specifically to handle family financial arrangements. But I don't understand. Why would you hide this from us? Why would you let us think? Think what, Mom? That you'd gotten lucky with some inheritance? I never told you that. You all came up with that story on your own because you couldn't imagine that I was actually capable of earning this kind of money. There was a long silence. Then, Vanessa, we need to talk about this. Can you come home? We can work this out. I don't have a home there anymore, remember? You made that very clear yesterday. Marcus changed the locks. That was before we understood the situation. We can change them back. The situation hasn't changed, Mom. I'm still the same person I was yesterday when you called me dead weight and told me to get out of your lives. The only difference is now you know what my contribution actually was. But Vanessa, we can't afford. The mortgage company wants $48,000 by March 1st, or they're starting foreclosure proceedings. And the utility companies are saying we have to reestablish service in our names, which requires deposits we don't have. I looked across the table at Riley, who was watching this conversation with fascination. That sounds like something you'll need to figure out. Maybe Jake can pick up some extra hours at GameStop. This isn't funny. We could lose everything. You already lost everything, Mom. You lost it the moment you decided that 3 years of support and sacrifice meant nothing because you couldn't be bothered to understand what I actually do for work. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line. Despite everything, it tugged at something in my chest. These people had raised me in their flawed way. They'd given me a place to live when I was starting my business, even if they'd never valued what I was building. But then I remembered Jake smirking at me, Marcus blocking the doorway and calling me a freeloader, the years of dismissive comments and eye rolls whenever I tried to share my professional victories. Vanessa, please, it's Christmas Eve. Can't we at least talk about this as a family? We're not family anymore, Mom. You made that very clear yesterday. The family would have asked questions before making assumptions. The family would have trusted me enough to believe I was working hard, even if they couldn't see it. My family wouldn't have thrown me out on Christmas Eve without even trying to understand my side of things. We can fix this, she said, desperately. We can apologize. You can do what? Go back in time and undo 3 years of treating me like a burden? Go back and erase all the times you told me to get a real job while I was literally paying your mortgage? Go back and make Marcus take back calling me worthless? There was another long silence. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Now you get exactly what you wanted, I said. You get to live your lives without me contributing anything to your household. You get to stand on your own 2 feet, just like you said I needed to do. And I get to build a life with people who actually value what I bring to the table. Vanessa, I have to go, Mom. I have a business call in 20 minutes with a client in Seattle. You know, my pretend job. After I hung up, Riley reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That was brutal, she said. How are you holding up? Honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years, I replied. For the first time in forever, I'm not walking on eggshells trying to prove my worth to people who refuse to see it. My phone buzzed with a text from David Sterling. Banks confirm all automatic payments terminated successfully.
The family has received certified mail with a 30-day notice for alternative arrangements. The car financing company has initiated a repossession process. How do you want to proceed? I showed the message to Riley. So, she said, this is really happening. No going back now. No going back, I agreed. They wanted me out of their lives. Now they're going to learn what that actually means. Outside the restaurant windows, snow was starting to fall again, blanketing the city in pristine white. It looked like it was going to be a very white Christmas indeed, and for the first time in 3 years, it was going to be a peaceful one for me.
Christmas morning arrived with a vengeance. I woke up to 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, and 12 voicemails. But it wasn't my family blowing up my phone this time. It was Jake's girlfriend, Brittany Morrison. Her first voicemail, left at 3:47 a.m., was sobbing and barely coherent. "Vanessa, please, you have to help us. They came and took Jake's car, right out of the driveway. He's devastated. Please call me back." The messages got progressively more frantic as the night went on. Apparently, the repossession company had worked Christmas Eve, which was aggressive even by their standards. But when you're dealing with a vehicle that's 3 payments behind and the guarantor has officially withdrawn support, they don't wait for holidays. I was reading through the messages when Riley knocked on my hotel suite door, carrying 2 cups of coffee and what looked like a stack of newspapers. "Merry Christmas," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "I brought presents. 1, excellent coffee. 2, local news coverage of your little family drama." News coverage? She handed me a copy of the Riverside County Tribune. There, on page 3, was a small headline: "Local family claims financial fraud after daughter stops paying bills." The article was brief but damning. Marcus had apparently gone to the local newspaper after the police told him no crime had been committed. The reporter had done just enough digging to discover that Clearwater Property Management was a legitimate LLC owned by me, and that all the payments in question were voluntary family support that had been legally terminated. "The best part," Riley said, grinning, "is the quote from the mortgage company representative. Listen to this. Mr. Thompson and Miss Rodriguez were informed at the time of their original mortgage application that their income was insufficient for the loan amount. The mortgage was only approved due to a guarantor agreement with a third party. When that guarantor withdrew support, the loan became immediately callable under the terms of the original agreement." "So they knew," I said quietly. "They knew from the beginning that they couldn't afford the house without my backing." It gets better. I called my friend Jessica, who works at First National Bank. According to her, when your mom and Marcus applied for the mortgage 3 years ago, they were initially denied. Then, suddenly, this property management company appears offering to guarantee the payments, and boom, instant approval. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard Jake's voice. "Vanessa, I'm calling from Brittany's phone. My phone got shut off this morning." Let me guess. The family plan was connected to one of the accounts I was covering? "Everything was connected to those accounts," he said, and I could hear the defeat in his voice. "Everything. The internet's been cut off, the electricity's getting disconnected at noon unless we come up with $800 for the deposit, and Mom's at the kitchen table crying because she just realized her credit cards were being automatically paid from your company, too." I felt a small stab of satisfaction mixed with an unexpected twinge of guilt. "How's Marcus handling it?" "He's not good. He spent the morning calling everyone he knows, trying to borrow money for the utility deposits. Nobody has that kind of cash just lying around on Christmas morning. And when he found out the car thing was legal, he kind of lost it." "Lost it? How?" "He punched a hole in the living room wall, said some things about you that, well, let's just say Brittany made me leave the room." Through the hotel window, I could see families walking to Christmas morning church services, bundled up against the cold, but laughing and talking together. Normal families, functional families. "Jake, can I ask you something honestly?" "Sure." "Did any of you ever wonder where the money was coming from? In 3 years, did it ever occur to you to ask questions about how your lifestyle suddenly improved so dramatically?" There was a long pause. "I guess. I mean, Mom said she'd inherited some money, and we just believed her. It seemed easier than asking questions." "Easier for who?"
For all of us, I guess. Look, I know how this looks now. I know we screwed up. But Vanessa, Marcus are talking about declaring bankruptcy. Mom's talking about moving in with her sister in Phoenix, which means I'd have to drop out of community college because I can't afford the out-of-state tuition. Everything's falling apart. I looked at Riley, who was listening to my end of the conversation with interest. She shook her head slightly and mouthed, "Don't cave." Jake, what exactly do you want from me?
I want to know if there's any way we can fix this. Any way at all. I'll get a second job, I'll drop out of school and work full-time, whatever it takes. But please, just tell me there's some way to undo this. The way to undo this would have been for your family to treat me with basic respect and dignity. The way to undo this would have been for Marcus to not call me worthless. The way to undo this would have been for my mother to not tell me I contribute nothing to the household while I'm literally keeping the lights on. But we didn't know. You didn't want to know. The frustration I'd been holding back finally bubbled over. Jake, I tried to tell you guys about my work dozens of times. Remember when I got that contract with the tech startup in Austin? I was so excited. I wanted to take everyone out to dinner to celebrate. Marcus rolled his eyes and said I was playing pretend businesswoman again. When I landed the Johnson & Associates project that paid $30,000, Patricia told me to stop bragging and focus on reality. I remember, he said quietly. So I stopped sharing. I stopped trying to get validation from people who were determined not to give it. And apparently, that convinced you all that I was doing nothing. Vanessa, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. But this is bigger than hurt feelings now. This is about losing the house, losing everything. No, Jake, this is about consequences. For 3 years, I subsidized a lifestyle none of you could afford while being treated like a burden. I'm not your personal ATM, and I'm not responsible for fixing problems that your family created by taking me for granted. My phone beeped with an incoming call. It was David Sterling. I need to take this, I told Jake. It's my lawyer. Your lawyer? Vanessa, please don't make this legal thing bigger than it already is. We can't afford to fight you in court. You can't afford not to fight me in court, Jake, but that's not my problem anymore. I switched to David's call. Merry Christmas, he said cheerfully. I have some updates. First, the mortgage company has agreed to extend the deadline to April 15th if your family can provide proof of alternative financing arrangements. Second, the utility companies are willing to restore service with deposits and cosigners. Third, your stepbrother's car financing company is offering a redemption period if someone can bring the account current within 10 days. And if they can't meet any of those requirements, then foreclosure proceedings begin in April, the utilities stay off, and the car gets auctioned. But here's the interesting part. I got a call this morning from a bankruptcy attorney representing your family. Apparently, they're exploring Chapter 7. Bankruptcy? Yep, which, ironically, would discharge most of their debts, but also mean they'd lose the house anyway. Plus, bankruptcy doesn't look great when you're trying to rent a new place or get employment that requires a credit check. After I hung up with David, Riley was watching me with concern. How are you feeling about all this? She asked. I keep waiting to feel guilty, I said honestly, but mostly I just feel free. For the first time in years, I'm not carrying the weight of other people's financial irresponsibility on my shoulders. Even knowing they might lose everything? Riley, they were going to lose everything anyway. The lifestyle they were living was completely unsustainable based on their actual income. I was just postponing the inevitable while enabling them to continue treating me like garbage. My phone beeped with an incoming call. It was David Sterling. I need to take this, I told Jake. It's my lawyer. Your lawyer? Vanessa, please don't make this legal thing bigger than it already is. We can't afford to fight you in court. You can't afford not to fight me in court, Jake, but that's not my problem anymore. I switched to David's call. Merry Christmas, he said cheerfully. I have some updates. First, the mortgage company has agreed to extend the deadline to April 15th if your family can provide proof of alternative financing arrangements. Second, the utility companies are willing to restore service with deposits and cosigners. Third, your stepbrother's car financing company is offering a redemption period if someone can bring the account current within 10 days. And if they can't meet any of those requirements,
Then, foreclosure proceedings begin in April, the utilities stay off, and the car gets auctioned. But here's the interesting part. I got a call this morning from a bankruptcy attorney representing your family. Apparently, they're exploring Chapter 7. Bankruptcy? Yep, which, ironically, would discharge most of their debts, but also mean they'd lose the house anyway. Plus, bankruptcy doesn't look great when you're trying to rent a new place or get employment that requires a credit check. After I hung up with David, Riley was watching me with concern. "How are you feeling about all this?" she asked. "I keep waiting to feel guilty," I said honestly, "but mostly I just feel free. For the first time in years, I'm not carrying the weight of other people's financial irresponsibility on my shoulders. Even knowing they might lose everything? Riley, they were going to lose everything anyway. The lifestyle they were living was completely unsustainable based on their actual income. I was just postponing the inevitable while enabling them to continue treating me like garbage." My phone beeped with a text from an unknown number. "This is Brittany. Jake's crying. Your mom's having a panic attack. Marcus punched another hole in the wall. Please just call them back. I know they messed up, but this is destroying them." I showed the message to Riley. "Wow," she said. "The thing is," I said, staring at the message, "I do feel bad for Brittany. And I feel bad for Jake, to some extent. But feelings don't change the fact that actions have consequences. They wanted me out of their lives. They got what they wanted. So, what's next?" I pulled up my laptop and opened my calendar. Next, I have a video conference with the team in Singapore about the new e-commerce platform we're building. Then, I had a call with the marketing agency in Denver. Then, Riley Chen and I are going to order room service and spend Christmas evening planning the expansion of our business partnership. "Sounds perfect," she said, raising her coffee cup. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed, clinking her cup against hers.
Outside, the snow had stopped falling, and the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. It was going to be a beautiful day. My phone rang one more time. It was Patricia. I let it go to voicemail. Some bridges, once burned, are meant to stay that way. 2 weeks into January, I was settling into my new downtown loft when the real bombshell dropped. I was unpacking my home office equipment, 3 monitors, a professional lighting setup, and the custom gaming chair I'd been too embarrassed to have delivered to my family's house, when David Sterling called with news that changed everything. "Vanessa, you need to sit down for this," he said. "I just got off the phone with Patricia's bankruptcy attorney, and there's something your family apparently never told you." "What now?" "The house isn't just in Marcus and Patricia's names. Your name is on the deed." I nearly dropped my phone. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." "Actually, you did. Remember 3 years ago when you co-signed what they told you was a family support document to help with their mortgage application?" The memory hit me like a freight train. I'd been so excited about landing my first major client, a boutique hotel chain but needed a complete website overhaul, that I'd barely read the paperwork Patricia had shoved in front of me. She'd said it was just a character reference for their loan application, something to show the bank that I supported their decision to buy the house. "David, are you telling me I'm legally an owner of that property?" "You're telling me you didn't know? Vanessa, you own 40% of the house. Marcus and Patricia each own 30%. When you terminated the financial support, you didn't just stop paying their bills. You effectively triggered a partition action." My head was spinning. "A what?" "A partition action. Since you're a co-owner who's no longer willing to contribute to the property expenses, you have the legal right to force a sale. And here's the kicker. As the party who's been making all the mortgage payments, you have a superior claim to any sale proceeds." I sank into my desk chair, staring out at the city skyline. So what does this mean, practically speaking? It means the bankruptcy attorney is wrong about their options. They can't just discharge the mortgage debt because you're a co-owner who's been making the payments. The bankruptcy court is going to want to know why a co-owner suddenly stopped contributing. And when they find out it's because the other owners kicked you out, well, let's just say it's not going to look good for them. Can they force me to keep paying? Absolutely not. But you can force them to sell.
And given the improvements that have been made to the property over the past 3 years, all funded by your payments, the house has probably appreciated significantly. After David hung up, I sat in my empty loft for a long time, processing this information. My family hadn't just taken advantage of my financial support, they'd tricked me into becoming a co-owner of property they couldn't afford, then treated me like a freeloader while I unknowingly paid the mortgage on my own house. My phone rang. It was Riley, calling from her office in San Francisco, where she was finalizing our new business partnership agreement. "How's the unpacking going?" she asked. "Riley, you're not going to believe this. I own the house." "What house?" "The house they kicked me out of. Apparently, when I signed what I thought was a character reference 3 years ago, I was actually signing on to the deed as a co-owner." There was a long silence. "Holy shit, Vanessa. Do they know?" "I don't think so. Their bankruptcy attorney certainly doesn't know, or he wouldn't be advising them to declare Chapter 7. "So what are you going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone beeped with an incoming call from Jake. "I have to take this," I told Riley. "It's Jake." "Vanessa!" Jake's voice was breathless with excitement. "I have amazing news. I talked to Mr. Henderson at the bank, and he said there might be a way to work out a payment plan that could save the house." "Really?"
Yeah, so here's the thing. He says if we can get the original payment guarantor to resume making payments, they'll consider restructuring the loan. All we need is for you to start covering the mortgage again, and we can probably work out something for the utilities and my car, too. I felt a familiar surge of anger. Even now, even after everything, they still saw me as nothing more than their personal bank account. Jake, let me ask you something. Do you know what a co-owner is? A co-owner? Like of a business or something? Or of a house? I guess. Someone who owns part of the house with other people? Why? Because I just found out that I'm a co-owner of the house you're trying to save. There was dead silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean, co-owner?" Jake finally asked. "I mean that when your parents had me sign what they called a character reference 3 years ago, I was actually signing on to the deed. I legally own 40% of that house, Jake. I've been paying the mortgage on my own property while your family treated me like a charity case. That can't be right." "It's very right. Which means I don't need to ask anyone's permission to make decisions about what happens to that house. I can force a sale anytime I want." "Vanessa, please, you can't." "I can't what? Exercise my legal rights as a property owner? Make decisions about my own investment? Jake, do you realize how much money I've put into that house? Between mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, and all the improvements, I've invested over $180,000 in that property. But it's our home. It's my investment, an investment that your family has been benefiting from while treating the investor like garbage." I could hear Jake talking to someone in the background, probably Brittany, his voice muffled but panicked. "Vanessa, look, what if we could work out some kind of arrangement? What if Mom and Marcus officially apologized? What if we all sat down and figured out a way for everyone to be happy?" "Will everyone be happy?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jake, 6 months ago, I would have been thrilled to have a conversation like that. But that ship sailed when Marcus called me worthless, and your mother told me I contributed nothing to the household while I was literally paying for the roof over their heads. But we know better now." "You know better because you got caught, not because you had some sudden moment of enlightenment about my value. There's a difference." My phone beeped with another call, David Sterling again. "I need to take this, Jake. It's my lawyer." "Your lawyer? Vanessa, please don't do anything crazy. We can fix this." I switched to David's call without responding. "More news," David said. "I've been doing some research on the property improvements. Your family filed for homestead exemption tax credits twice in the past 3 years for major renovations. Kitchen remodel, bathroom upgrades, new flooring, HVAC system replacement, all funded by your payments, all increasing the property value. How much are we talking about?" Conservatively, the house was worth $240,000 when they bought it. With the improvements and market appreciation, it's probably worth $320 now, maybe more. So if we forced a sale, after paying off the remaining mortgage balance, you'd be looking at a profit of maybe $70,000. Marcus and Patricia would split about half that between them, assuming the court doesn't award you additional compensation for the improvements you funded. When I called Riley back, she was practically vibrating with excitement. "This is poetic justice," she said. "They kicked you out of a house you legally own while you were paying the mortgage they couldn't afford." The weird part is, I think I'm more angry about the deception than anything else, I said. They let me think I was just helping out my family, when really, I was making investment payments on property I owned. They turned me into an unwitting landlord and then treated me like a freeloader. So what's the plan? I looked around my new loft. The exposed brick walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern kitchen where I could cook without listening to complaints about grocery bills. It was smaller than the house I'd been paying for, but it was entirely mine. "I think it's time to schedule a family meeting," I said. "A real one this time, where everyone gets to learn some very interesting facts about property ownership and legal obligations." "Are you going to give them a chance to make things right?" "I'm going to give them a chance to hear the truth. What they do with that information will determine whether we're having a conversation about reconciliation or a conversation about partition actions and forced property sales." Outside my window, the city lights were beginning to twinkle in the early evening darkness. Somewhere across town, my family was probably sitting in a cold, dark house trying to figure out how to salvage their situation. They were about to discover it was much more complicated than they'd ever imagined. And for the first time in weeks, I was looking forward to that conversation. The family meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at a neutral location, the conference room at David Sterling's law office. I'd insisted on neutral ground because I wasn't about to walk back into that house and pretend everything was normal while they tried to manipulate me into resuming payments. Friday night, I got an unexpected visitor at my loft. Brittany Morrison was standing in my building's lobby at 9 p.m., looking like she hadn't slept in days. "I know you probably don't want to see me," she said when I came down to meet her, "but Jake is falling apart, and I need to understand what's really happening here." I led her up to my apartment, curious about what Jake's girlfriend could possibly tell me that I didn't already know. "Nice place," she said, looking around at my minimalist setup. "Jake showed me pictures of your old room. This is definitely an upgrade." "Thanks. What did you want to talk about, Brittany?" She sat down on my couch and pulled out her phone. "I've been doing some research since Christmas, about your business, about the finances, about everything, and I found some things that Jake doesn't know about. Such as the fact that Marcus has been telling people around town that you hacked into their bank accounts and stole their inheritance money." I blanked. "He what?" "He's been going to the hardware store, the diner, anywhere people will listen, saying that you're some kind of computer criminal who manipulated their finances. He even called Jake's manager at GameStop and tried to get him to fire Jake because he was associated with a cybercriminal." My jaw dropped. That's completely insane, and it's defamation. It gets worse. Patricia's been calling your old high school friends, telling them you had a mental breakdown and became obsessed with destroying the family. She told Sarah Chen, Riley's cousin, that you're having delusions of success and that your business is just an elaborate fantasy. I felt my blood pressure rising. It was one thing for them to be angry with me privately. It was another thing entirely for them to be spreading lies about my mental state and criminal activity around our small town. "There's more," Brittany continued. "Marcus filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, claiming that Clearwater Property Management is a fraudulent company. And he contacted your biggest client, that hotel chain you work with, and told them you were under investigation for financial crimes." He contacted Austin Grand Hotels? I felt the world tilt slightly. They were my anchor client, the contract that had launched my business into the big leagues. I don't know the name, but it was some hotel company.
Jake overheard him on the phone bragging about how he was going to destroy your fake business by telling your clients the truth about what kind of person you are. I grabbed my laptop and started checking my emails frantically. Nothing from Austin Grand Hotels yet, but it was Friday night. If Marcus had called them, I probably wouldn't hear about it until Monday morning. Brittany, why are you telling me this? She sighed. Because Jake loves his family, but he's not stupid. He knows they're going nuclear, and he knows it's wrong. But he can't stand up to them directly without losing his place to live. So he asked me to warn you. Warn me about what, exactly?
Marcus is planning something for tomorrow's meeting. He's been talking to some guy he knows who claims to be a lawyer. Turns out it's just his cousin who works for an insurance company, but Marcus doesn't know that. This fake lawyer told him that if he can prove you're mentally unstable, he can get power of attorney and control your business assets. I stared at her. That's not how power of attorney works at all. I know that, you know that, but Marcus doesn't know that. He thinks if he brings enough evidence of your instability to the meeting tomorrow, your real lawyer will be forced to hand over control of your company. What kind of evidence? Printed out screenshots of your social media posts, photos of your apartment that Jake took when he helped you move. He's really sorry about that, by the way. And some kind of document he claims proves you've been stealing from them. I rubbed my temples. This is harassment, Brittany. This is stalking and defamation and harassment. I know, Jake knows, but Marcus has convinced Patricia that this is their only chance to save the house. My phone rang. It was David Sterling. Sorry to call so late, he said, but I just got a very interesting voicemail from someone claiming to represent your family. Marcus Thompson apparently contacted my office this afternoon, demanding I withdraw from representing you because of conflict of interest issues. What kind of conflict of interest? According to Mr. Thompson, I'm not allowed to represent you in matters involving family property because you're mentally incompetent and he's filing for emergency guardianship. He's what? It's nonsense, of course, but Vanessa, he's clearly escalating this situation. I think we need to be prepared for tomorrow's meeting to go sideways. After David hung up, I looked at Brittany, who was watching my face with concern. How bad is this going to get? I asked her. Honestly, I think Marcus has completely lost his grip on reality. He's convinced that this is all some elaborate plot against him, and that if he fights hard enough, he can force you to go back to paying for everything while pretending nothing happened. And Patricia? Where does she stand in all this? Patricia's scared. She knows Marcus is making things worse, but she's also terrified of losing the house. She keeps oscillating between wanting to apologize to you and supporting Marcus's increasingly crazy schemes. I got up and started pacing around my living room. 3 months ago, I'd been a daughter trying to help her family build a better life. Now, I was apparently dealing with defamation, business interference, and threats of frivolous guardianship proceedings. Brittany, I need you to do me a favor. What? I need you to record tomorrow's meeting on your phone. Keep it hidden, but get everything on audio. If Marcus is really planning to make false accusations about my mental state or my business practices, I want evidence. Is that legal? David will know the laws about recording at his office, but if they're planning to defame me in front of my lawyer, I want proof. She nodded. Jake's going to be there too, you know. He's terrified of what Marcus might do. Good. Maybe he'll finally see what his stepfather really is when he's backed into a corner. After Brittany left, I spent the evening preparing for what was apparently going to be a much more confrontational meeting than I'd expected. I printed out all my business registration documents, client contracts, bank statements, and tax returns. If Marcus wanted to question my mental competence and business legitimacy, he was about to get more documentation than he could handle. But more than that, I realized this meeting was going to be the final test of whether any relationship with my family was salvageable. If they came in ready to apologize and work together, maybe we could find a path forward. If they came in with accusations and legal threats, then any lingering guilt I felt about their situation was about to evaporate completely. I also made another decision. I called David Sterling back. David, I want to discuss filing a partition action to force the sale of the house. Are you sure? That's going to be the nuclear option.
Once we file that, there's no going back to family negotiations. I'm sure. Don't file it yet, but prepare the paperwork. If tomorrow goes badly, if they really are planning to attack my character and interfere with my business, then I want to be able to move immediately.
Understood. And Vanessa, for what it's worth, I think you're handling this exactly right. No one should have to tolerate defamation and harassment, even from family. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. As I got dressed for the meeting, I realized that whatever happened in that conference room, my old life was officially over. The question now was whether the new life I was building would include any place for the people who had raised me, or whether they had finally burned every bridge beyond repair. I grabbed my briefcase, took one last look around my peaceful loft, and headed out to discover which version of my family would show up to this meeting. The one that might still be capable of remorse, or the one that had apparently declared war on my reputation and my livelihood. Either way, I was ready. The conference room at David Sterling's law office felt like a courtroom as everyone filed in Saturday afternoon. I arrived first, followed by David with a stack of legal documents that seemed to grow thicker by the day. Then came Jake and Brittany, both looking nervous and avoiding eye contact. Finally, Marcus and Patricia arrived, with Marcus carrying what appeared to be a briefcase full of his evidence. Before we begin, David announced, I need everyone to understand that this meeting is being recorded for legal purposes, and anything said here could potentially be used in future proceedings. Marcus immediately bristled. We didn't agree to any recording. You don't have to agree, David replied calmly. This is my office, and given the nature of the accusations that have been made against my client, I'm documenting this meeting for her protection. What accusations? Patricia asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. David pulled out a folder. Let's see. Claims that Miss Rodriguez is a cybercriminal who hacked your bank accounts. Allegations that she's mentally unstable and running a fraudulent business. Defamatory statements made to her professional contacts. False complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. Should I continue? Marcus's face turned red. Those aren't accusations, those are facts. This whole situation proves she's not mentally competent to handle. Marcus, stop. The voice came from Jake, who had been sitting quietly in the corner. Just stop. Everyone turned to look at him. Brittany squeezed his hand encouragingly. You need to stop, Jake continued, his voice getting stronger. Vanessa, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not because we need your money, but because everything Marcus has been doing this past week is insane, and I should have spoken up sooner. Jake, Patricia warned, we discussed this as a family. No, Mom. You and Marcus discussed this. I was just expected to go along with it, like always. Jake turned to face me directly. Vanessa, I've spent the last 2 weeks learning things about our family that I never knew. About how the mortgage really worked, about how much money you were actually making, about how we treated you while you were keeping us afloat. Marcus slammed his briefcase on the table. She manipulated us. She made us think Patricia had inherited money so she could control our lives. Marcus, David interjected, you're about to accuse my client of fraud in front of witnesses. I'd be very careful about your next words. I have documentation, Marcus snarled, opening his briefcase. Screenshots proving she was living beyond her means. Photos of her apartment showing she was spending money irresponsibly. Bank statements that prove… That proves what? I asked, calmly. That I was successful enough to afford my own place while still covering your family's expenses? David leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, before you continue, there's something you need to know about the property in question. What about it? Your stepdaughter owns 40% of it. She's been paying the mortgage on her own house while you've been living there as her tenant. The room went dead silent. Patricia's face went white. Marcus just stared at David like he was speaking a foreign language. That's impossible, Marcus finally said. We bought that house. Our names are on the deed. Your names are on the deed, agreed, along with Miss Rodriguez's name.
When she signed what you told her was a character reference, she was actually being added as a co-owner. Every mortgage payment she's made has been paying down her own property investment. Patricia started to cry. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but genuine, heartbroken sobs. Vanessa, we didn't know. We never meant for... You never meant for what, Mom? For me to find out? For me to realize you'd tricked me into buying a house and then treated me like a charity case while I paid for my own home?
Marcus was frantically shuffling through his papers. This doesn't change anything. She still abandoned her family responsibilities. She still... Mr. Thompson, David said firmly, your stepdaughter has the legal right to force a sale of that property anytime she chooses. She's been extraordinarily patient in allowing you to continue living there rent-free after you asked her to leave. Forced sale? Patricia gasped. Partition action, David explained. Since the co-owners can no longer agree on the property's management, any owner can petition the court to force a sale and divide the proceeds. Jake looked at me with something approaching panic. Vanessa, you wouldn't actually. I looked around the table at these people who had shaped my life for better and worse. Marcus, still clutching his pathetic collection of evidence, unable to accept that his stepdaughter was more successful than he'd ever dreamed. Patricia, finally understanding the magnitude of what they'd done to me. Jake, caught between loyalty to his family and his growing awareness of how wrong they'd been. 6 months ago, I said quietly, if you had sat me down and said you were struggling financially, I would have helped you figure out a budget. I would have taught Jake about building credit and saving money. I would have helped Marcus find better paying work or get training in new skills. I would have done anything to help this family succeed together. We can still do that, Patricia said desperately. We can sit down and work out a plan. No, Mom, we can't, because instead of coming to me as family asking for help, you decided I was worthless and threw me away. And when that backfired, instead of apologizing and trying to make amends, Marcus decided to try to destroy my reputation and interfere with my business. I pulled out my phone and showed them an email I'd received that morning. Austin Grand Hotels called me this morning. Apparently, someone contacted them claiming I was under investigation for financial crimes. They've suspended my contract pending a review of the allegations. I looked directly at Marcus. That contract was worth $40,000, Marcus. You didn't just attack me, you attacked my livelihood. Marcus had gone very pale. I was just trying to protect my family. By destroying mine? I stood up. David, please file the partition action first thing Monday morning. Vanessa, wait. Jake jumped up. Please, there has to be another way. What if Marcus apologized? What if we all sat down and... Jake, your stepfather spent this week telling everyone in town that I'm a criminal and mentally ill. He contacted my biggest client and cost me a major contract. He tried to convince a lawyer to steal my business assets. At what point do I stop being the family doormat and start protecting myself? Brittany spoke up for the first time. Jake, she's right. You know she's right. Patricia was sobbing openly now. Vanessa, please. I know we messed up, but we're family. The family forgives each other. Family respects each other, I replied. Families don't take advantage of each other for 3 years and then launch a smear campaign when the gravy train ends. David cleared his throat. If I may, there is one alternative to the partition action. Everyone looked at him hopefully. Miss Rodriguez could offer to buy out the other owner's shares of the property. Given the current market value and the improvements she's funded, she could offer Marcus and Patricia $60,000 for their combined 60% ownership. They'd have enough to relocate and start over, and Miss Rodriguez would have full ownership of the property she's been paying for. Marcus shook his head. $60,000 isn't enough to buy another house. It's enough for a down payment, David replied, which is more than you had when Miss Rodriguez unknowingly co-signed for your current home. I thought about it for a moment. $60,000 to be completely free of this situation, to own my investment property outright, and to never have to deal with their financial crises again? I'll do it, I said. $60,000 and full ownership transfers to me. You have 30 days to find alternative housing. Patricia looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. And then what? We just never see each other again? I don't know, Mom.
Maybe someday we can have a relationship built on mutual respect instead of financial dependency. But right now, I need space to rebuild the professional reputation that Marcus tried to destroy, and you need to learn how to manage your lives without my subsidies. As we all filed out of the conference room, Jake caught up with me in the hallway. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I'm proud of you. I know that probably doesn't mean much coming from me, but you handled this better than any of us deserved.
Take care of yourself, Jake, and maybe consider that community college degree you were talking about. You're smarter than you think. 6 months later, I was sitting in my fully renovated downtown loft, now a proper home office with space for the team I'd hired to help manage my growing business. Austin Grand Hotels had not only reinstated my contract after their investigation found Marcus's claims to be completely baseless, but they'd referred me to 3 other hotel chains looking for website development. Riley knocked on my door with coffee and the local newspaper. "You'll want to see page 6, she said, grinning. There was a small article about Marcus and Patricia's new apartment complex, a modest place across town where they were apparently adjusting to a lifestyle that matched their actual income. The article mentioned that they were both taking financial literacy classes and that Marcus had enrolled in a trade certification program. "Think you'll ever talk to them again?" Riley asked. "Maybe," I said, looking out at the city skyline where my success had taken root and flourished. Maybe when they've learned to value people for who they are instead of what they can provide. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Started community college this week. Thanks for believing I was smarter than I thought. Hope you're doing well." I smiled and typed back, "Proud of you. Keep going." 3 months after that exchange, something unexpected happened. I received an email from a woman named Dr. Sarah Mitchell at the local university's business school. She'd heard about my story through the professional networking circles and wanted to interview me for a case study she was developing about family financial boundaries and entrepreneurship. "Your situation represents a fascinating intersection of business ethics, family psychology, and legal property rights," she explained during our first meeting. "Would you be interested in speaking to my graduate students about navigating complex family-business relationships?" The speaking engagement went so well that it led to 3 more universities inviting me to share my experience. What had started as a personal family crisis had somehow evolved into a teaching opportunity about financial independence, professional boundaries, and the importance of documentation in business relationships. During one of these speaking engagements at Portland State University, a student asked me the question I'd been dreading. "Do you ever regret how you handled the situation? Do you think there was a gentler way to teach your family the same lesson?" I thought about it for a long moment before answering. I spent 3 years being gentle. I was gentle when they dismissed my work as pretend. I was gentle when they rolled their eyes at my accomplishments. I was gentle when they took credit for lifestyle improvements I was funding. Sometimes, the gentlest thing you can do for people is to stop enabling their harmful behavior and force them to face reality. The question haunted me for weeks afterward, though. It wasn't until I received an unexpected phone call that I found my answer. "Vanessa, it's Patricia." I nearly dropped my phone. It had been 8 months since the buyout, and I hadn't heard from my mother since the day they moved out. "Hi, Mom." "I know I don't have the right to ask this," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. "But I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" "The financial literacy classes Marcus and I have been taking, they opened our eyes to things we never understood. We learned about budgeting, about living within our means, about how credit actually works. For the first time in our adult lives, we're not living paycheck to paycheck or depending on windfalls to survive." She paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. "We also learned about something called financial abuse. The instructor explained how people sometimes use money to control others, even within families. And I realized that's what we were doing to you, wasn't it? We were using your need to help us as a way to keep you small and dependent on our approval." I felt tears prick at my eyes. This was the conversation I'd been hoping for since I was 22 years old. "It wasn't intentional, Mom." "Maybe not consciously, but the effect was the same. Every time you succeeded, we felt smaller, so we found ways to diminish your success.
Every time you tried to grow, we pulled you back into old patterns. We kept you trapped in the role of the grateful child who should be happy with whatever scraps of validation we threw your way. What changed your perspective?
Losing everything, she said simply. When we had to start over with just our actual income, we realized how much we'd been living in fantasy land. And when Marcus couldn't find anyone else to blame for our situation, he finally had to look in the mirror. It wasn't pretty, but it was necessary. She told me about their new life, the small apartment they'd learned to call home, Marcus's certification in renewable energy installation that had doubled his income, her promotion to full-time bookkeeper with benefits. They were attending couples counseling and had started a small emergency savings account. We're not wealthy, she said, but we're stable, and more importantly, we're honest about our limitations instead of trying to live beyond our means and resenting the people who make it possible. How's Jake doing? He's thriving. Deems list last semester, and he got accepted into the business program. He's been working part-time at an accounting firm, learning about corporate finance. He talks about you sometimes, says you showed him that success isn't about the size of your office or the car you drive, it's about building something sustainable that you can be proud of. We talked for another hour, catching up on the mundane details that make up real life. She told me about the community garden she'd joined, about Marcus's Wednesday night bowling league, about the book club she'd started with other women from their apartment complex. I don't expect forgiveness, she said as we prepared to hang up. I don't expect you to trust us with your success again, but I wanted you to know that your tough love worked. We're better people now than we were when we were living in that house. I'm glad, Mom. I really am. Would you be open to having coffee sometime? Just to talk, no expectations, no requests for help, just, I'd like to know the woman you've become when you're not carrying the weight of our dysfunction. 2 weeks later, we met at a small cafe near her new neighborhood. She looked different, older, yes, but also more grounded somehow, less frantic. When she talked about her work, there was genuine pride in her voice instead of the defensive anxiety I remembered. You know what's funny? She said over her second cup of coffee. I'm happier now in our 800-square-foot apartment than I ever was in that big house, because everything we have now, we earned honestly. There's no mystery money, no secrets about how we can afford our lifestyle. It's all transparent and sustainable. As I walked back to my car that afternoon, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about punishment at all. Sometimes it's about creating space for people to become their better selves. My family had needed to hit rock bottom to discover who they really were underneath all that financial anxiety and false pride. They'd found out they were actually pretty decent people when they weren't drowning in lifestyle inflation and resentment. And I'd found out that success tastes sweetest when it's built on your own terms, surrounded by people who celebrate your victories instead of diminishing them. Some bridges can be rebuilt, I thought as I drove home through the city that had become my playground and my kingdom. But first, people have to be willing to meet you halfway, and sometimes that means letting them fall far enough to find their own footing first. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.